gonna be here in the middle, right?
Yeah, I'll be here, yes.
Right, and then the three of us will be here. Okay, so he just said I have to be away from the podium for the camera to see me.
Okay, okay.
And then Ralph's gonna build me a riser. The riser we have disappeared.
Okay. I gotta get. Everybody, 1 minute, please find a seat. Hi, Alex. No, that Alex. We got all kinds of Alexes here today. There are never too many Alexes. There's not enough Alexes. Meeting production people, you tell me when to start. I'll wait till after that. Do you want the speakers turned down, Alex? Okay. I know. Okay. If anybody's listening on Zoom, I know there's some issues out there, but we've got a great sound here in the ballroom, so let's get going. Okay, everyone. I call this meeting of the Rotary Club of Oakland to order. I'm Dudley Thompson, and I have the honor to serve as the president of the Rotary Club of Oakland. We were founded in 1908 and were the third established club of some 36,000 Rotary clubs in over 200 countries around the world. We're a diverse community of some 270 local business, professional, and community leaders who try to improve local and international communities through a common commitment of service above self. For over 114 years, we've welcomed Rotarians and guests of Rotarians. Excuse me. And I welcome you to this, our 5,391st meeting. For those attending online, if you're a visiting Rotarian or the guest of a Rotarian, please enter your name in the chat box, which is located at the bottom of the screen, so that we can recognize you in a few minutes. If you have comments or want to ask the question of a speaker, please use the chat box. We recommend that you view today's meeting using Speaker View located in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. For those of you here in the California Ballroom, I ask that you not use your electronic device to watch today's meeting on Zoom or to connect to the Ballroom Wi-Fi. For the near future, I hope it's just the near future, our club protocol and the protocol of the City of Oakland is that you wear a mask inside unless you are actively eating or drinking. We're trying to make this space as safe as possible for our members and guests while still having a great meeting. I also ask that you refrain from talking during the meeting as sound becomes background noise for the online broadcast. Alex Kaffka, do you have a thought for the day? Would you please come up here? I know you have lots of thoughts by this time in the morning.
Thank you, President Dudley. Fellow Rotarians, how are you? Do you remember Stephen Covey, the days of Stephen Covey, and how transformative he was in the business world and in the organizational world? My comment today, or thought from the day, is from Stephen Covey. I thought it was very apropos, and it is, when you show deep empathy towards others, their defensive energy goes down and positive energy replaces it. That's when you can get more creative in solving problems.
Thank you, Alex. Could you please join me in the Rotary Vision Statement? Are we able to get that up on screen? Together, we see a world where people unite to take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Is past District Governor and past President Ed Jellen here? Can somebody grab the mic? And I don't know if we have any visiting Rotarians, but Keith, could you just, okay, he's on Zoom, okay. Keith, in the ballroom, let's start here. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? I don't think we do, but oh, okay, we always, Dianne. Joe, would you like to introduce this person sitting next to you that none of us have ever met? Just a second, we need a little heat in that mic. There we go.
My great pleasure introducing you to Dianne Dorn, who is Jesse's better half, and also happens to be the area 4A.
Thank you. Welcome, Dianne. Okay, and I believe that we do have some guests here. J Hirschfield. Can we get a mic to CJ? Just not yet. We're getting there. Okay. Okay, this is the fun AV day. It's like the roller coaster, 7 flags of Rotary. Great. And we absolutely know if you join Rotary, your first job at Rotary is going to be on our AV committee. We usually don't have this kind of problem. We always enjoy a little different problem with AV. I used to be chair of AV, and I just know every week is an interesting time. Okay, Ed Jellen. So, Peter, are you able to hear Ed Jellen out there? Okay, Ed, do we have any visiting Rotarians online?
Hi, President Dudley. No visiting Rotarians checked in, but we do have a guest that was brought here courtesy of Ruth Stroup. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Edie Zusman, who is with us today, and welcome to Edie.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay. Karen Friedman, would you and Keith Jerome come up here, please? Yes, Keith, too. We don't, one thing, and it's not part of this, while they're coming up, we're just doing this casually, but we do want to wish you happy birthday today, Keith, as you come up here.
What should we sing? No, we have
You
time
can
to
sing all you
Not me.
We don't have time to sing.
Oh, okay. No singing. No singing. Well, I don't. You want to stand? Oh, okay. It's my privilege to reintroduce Keith Jerome to the club today. In particular, since it's his birthday, we're not going to ask you how old. So, oh, there we go.
Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Keith. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
He doesn't. So I was thinking about how to organize this presentation, and I thought, well, I'll do it like a Wikipedia post. So the first section is early years. So Keith was born and raised in Denver, mostly in the suburbs there. There is that adorable Keith. I mean, isn't he gorgeous? Yes. His dad was a stonemason bricklayer, nominated for Best Stonemason several times. His dad was actually an artisan. He aimed for perfection. He was hardworking and a good provider for the family. On occasion, he didn't even charge for his work if the situation warranted it. Obviously, he was a role model for Keith. There was a large blended family after his dad remarried. They spent many weekends in the mountains, hiking, camping, etc. And Keith, of course, became a lover of the outdoors. So this is the high school graduation picture. Yes, Keith? Is that high school?
Yes,
Yeah.
high school.
In high school, Keith developed his athletic and leadership abilities. He ran cross country, was captain of the team. He wrestled and was co-captain of that team. He won many awards in wrestling, including placing 4th in the state in his weight class. After high school, Keith attended Notre Dame, where he continued to wrestle. Next slide. His first match was against the state champion. Keith beat him 2 years in a row. At Notre Dame, Keith majored in accounting, but really he enjoyed philosophy. Knowing Keith, that makes total sense. Okay, next section, professional life. Keith's first job was at the now defunct Arthur Andersen in San Francisco in the auditing department. He then went on to Kaiser Aetna, which was a real estate development partnership formed in 1969 between Kaiser Aluminum and Aetna. Based in Oakland, it had ownership of some 300 properties as of 1977, and Keith worked as an accountant there. He later moved to Miami for 1 year and Memphis for 1 year, and then returned in 1983 and formed Jones and Duran CPAs. He's been a member of the American Institute of CPAs since 1973 and past president of the California Society of CPAs East Bay chapter. Mary Jiang and Rod Hughes were also past presidents of that organization. And for 5 years, Keith prepared our Rotary tax returns and reviewed our financials. A few years ago, Jones and Duran split up, and Keith became a sole practitioner. And I know he's a CPA for many Rotarians here. Next section, Rotary life. Keith has been a member of our club since 1989. Did they show the picture?
You can see what's there
Oh,
down here.
oh, there's a picture, his first handbook picture, directory picture. One more, go back one more. He's been a member of the club since 1989 with a short hiatus when he relocated to Denver to open an accountancy office. He served 1 full term on the board of ORE, and in 1994, Keith and Mike Bruck served as co-chairs of our annual fundraiser called Taste of California. So then, I think we have another picture of the committee. There they are. Don't they look great with hair and so on? More than 1,000 people bought tickets for that event. Keith and I have belonged to the World Community Service Committee for quite some time, where he has been quite active, even during tax season. We both have gone to project fairs in Colombia, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. He has sponsored 3 global grants in Central and South America and took on a 4th when our beloved David Mears unexpectedly died. 1 year, Keith and Peter Sherris actually went to Colombia to visit the grant in La Plata, and that's what this picture is here. When the World Community Service Committee was experiencing conflict amongst its members, Keith served as a vital consensus builder, a voice of reason in the tumult that we were experiencing. Okay, last section, personal life. Keith still loves to hike and spend time outdoors. Some of his favorite spots are Lake Chabot and the Sierras. Every morning he power walks around Lake Merritt, doing it in 43 minutes, which from my experience is a very good time. He enjoys traveling. Besides Rotary trips and visits to Costa Rica, pre-pandemic he traveled to Spain 8 to 10 times, where he had a chance to hike, among other things. At one point he actually walked the Camino de Santiago. In the early 2000s, Keith participated in Landmark Education, which was the successor to Warner Earhart's EST. And the younger folks in the audience, they don't know what this is, but it was really significant at a certain period of time. He was required to create a community service project to benefit a population he cared about. Keith's project was in Costa Rica. For those not familiar with Landmark, the programs are designed to bring about personal breakthroughs, not mere insights. Keith has three daughters, two grandchildren? two grandchildren, an adopted son, and his son Daniel, who lives in San Jose, Costa Rica. He is devoted to Daniel and flies to San Jose every 6 weeks or so to spend time with him. You may have met Daniel at a Rotary meeting before the pandemic. Let's see, what else? Keith has a standing poker game, which I wouldn't want to play with him. We're as good about numbers as he is. And lastly, to sum up, his personal motto is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that's a little bit about Keith Jerome.
Keith, is there a little something you wanted to say?
Yes, President Dudley. I wanted that baby picture. I was visiting my mother, about 6 months ago, and the discussion of the baby picture came up. She always reminds me that I won second place in a cute baby contest. And my brother Rob had never seen the picture. He said, "Mom, should he have won first place?" And Mom said, the winner was awfully cute. She was very pretty. She had curly blonde hair and big, big, big blue eyes, so I don't know.
Thank you, Keith. Jack McAvoy. Thank you, Jack. Karen Friedman rings the bell for Keith Jerome. Linda Bosenecker. Fred Morse. Barbara Beery. Mary Jiang. Okay. Michael Bruck. Thank you. For those of you that are new, a bell ringer is a $100 donation, a generous $100 donation to the Oakland Rotary Endowment. Keith, it's wonderful to know you and to have you a member of this club, and I hope for many more birthdays to come. Welcome. Yes. Keith Jerome rings the bell for my demotion. Thank you, Keith. I think everybody's waiting for that one. Okay. So could Barbara Beery, Joe Goralka, and Mary Jiang come up here? I'll say a word before they come, while they come up here. So something we haven't talked much about this year is a Rotary tradition of exchanging flags. And it's if you travel to another club, you can get a flag here. This is the Oakland Rotary Club, and you exchange that with another club. And then you bring that flag back here, and you can tell people where you've been, and it develops a collection. We haven't done much of this during COVID, but we're just starting to do that. And because of the International Convention, Mary and Joe and Barbara have flags. Would you like to just say a word about your flag? Sure.
So I had the pleasure of visiting with a good friend of mine I've known over 20 years, Peter Kampala Bala, and he's from Jinja, Uganda, Africa. And he was there. He actually runs a school for disadvantaged students. The Oakland Rotary Club actually did 12 protected water springs with the Jinja Rotary Club back when the Rotary turned 100 years. This flag is from Jinja, obviously, and it's the source of the River Nile. And I think this flag depicts the water flowing out of Lake Victoria, forming the Blue Nile, which eventually becomes the Nile River. The one thing that's pretty fun, Peter has been to my home several times. This year in August, I'll have a chance to stay with Peter. We're going in August to Africa, and hopefully have a chance to see the protected springs that you guys all supported many years ago.
Thank you, Joe. Barbara?
I have two flags. One is this from the Seabrook, Texas Club. They did home hosting at the Rotary International Convention, and it was absolutely fun to spend time with local Rotarians and learn more about their club. So on behalf of Jesse, who actually brought this,
Thank you.
and I managed to walk off without my flag. It's still at home, and I promise to get it to you, President Dudley. The flag that I brought from the Rotary International Convention was from Sri Lanka, and I met the district governor of Sri Lanka, and we have a global grant there. And so we talked about our project, and it was really great to meet her in person.
Thank you, Barbara. Mary?
Okay, so my flag is from Kampala, Uganda. I was at the House of Friendship, and I was talking to this Rotarian from Uganda, and she said, I'm from Kampala, and I said, whoa, there's Oakland #3 has 2 global clean water grant with Kampala, Uganda, and we would love to exchange this flag and give it to Dudley.
Thank you, Mary. So remember, as you're traveling, please stop, maybe pick one or 2 flags, especially to foreign countries, but even other Rotary clubs, and offer them an exchange of flag. Thank you. Barbara, would you stay up here and tell us a little bit about the Carl Stuckey World Community Service Committee?
I would be delighted to summarize the work that the Carl Stuckey World Community Service Committee did in 21-22 this year, President Dudley's year. Thanks to you, your donations to Rotary International and your donations to Oakland Rotary Endowment, we had a great budget. We had $39,648 of district designated funds and $55,000 of cash. So what is district designated funds? When you donate to Rotary International, it's invested, and 3 years later on a rolling basis, they contribute some back to our district that's then distributed to our club pro rata. And then what's really important about that is that we use district designated funds in global grants, and Rotary International matches that, so we double our impact. And of course, because of your donations to Oakland Rotary Endowment, we had a very substantial cash budget, which we use. So now, because of you, I will tell you how we spent that budget. This year we had 6 new projects in Africa. We have a major project in Ethiopia. In Addis Ababa, we are helping blind university women manage their disability with special software and use of computers. In Uganda, we have 3 global grants. New to us is, we haven't done work in Uganda. Kampala is the capital, and there we have a WASH project. So what is a WASH project? It is water, sanitation, and hygiene, which is one of the areas of focus of Rotary International global grants. This project in the capital of Kampala is centered at St. Janan's School, and so they're a very responsible organization that will not only provide clean water for the students, but also the teachers and the parents and the community in general, and sales to the community will help sustain the longevity of this project. Also in Kampala, nearby in the rural area of Ngongolo, is another WASH project that also includes an integrated economic community development aspect. Well, why is it important to have an integrated project? A project is more likely to be sustainable long-term and meaningful for lasting change in the community if it integrates various aspects of economic upliftment. Water is often the beginning because it's so critical to all aspects of life, especially freeing women and children from spine-crushing transportation of water buckets on their heads for miles and miles. Healthy hygiene habits go with better water access. And then this infrastructure supports development of sources of income that keep youth in place and helps minimize the migration to urban centers where they typically end up in slums. The third project in Uganda is malaria elimination, along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and also a Rotary organization that was founded for the benefit of eliminating malaria. Also in South Africa, we donated cash for school supplies. And the fourth country in Africa is new to us, Ivory Coast, and I'm particularly excited to share this project because it's about the Women's Farming Initiative, where women are learning better farming skills, and that frees up their daughters who are otherwise income producing for the family to go to school. And then it uplifts the entire community because the greater produce not only benefits the family, but the school and also the wider community. The next area is Mexico and Central America, and we're donating cash to participate in District Governor Richard Flanders' wheelchair project in Mexico, and there will be a trip in July for that. In Central America, we're continuing our commitment to Uniendo America, which was Carl Stuckey's legacy, and Guatemala continues to be a major focus for us there. We are the international driver for a major grant that is actually a follow-up grant called Voces y Manos, and the youth are leading the development of farming skills that address climate change and also address food insecurity. In El Salvador, we contribute to a major water infrastructure program, again, a WASH project, with Engineers Without Borders to benefit two communities near Maquilishuat. In Panama, we're contributing to the benefit of environmental protection. Scientists are working with indigenous population to stop hunting endangered species, to promote, as well as to promote community economic development. And then South America, we're contributing cash in Chile for a water access infrastructure global grant for many clubs and many communities. In Asia, we are working in Jordan, in Western Asia, to support Afghan refugees from Afghanistan into Jordan. And then in South Central Asia and Afghanistan, we're supporting internal refugees who are moving because of the war from rural areas to the city areas and had to leave everything behind. Then in South Asia, we're continuing our project in India. Last but not least is Eastern Europe. This club has done a fantastic job of supporting Ukraine. So thank you, President Dudley, for letting me talk about this.
Thank you, Barbara. And Barbara and Sean Marks are co-chairs of this committee. And Ukraine just got a brief mention at the end, but help me, the number was 30.
If you'll grant me a half more minute.
15 seconds.
Okay, so there was a challenge grant of $15,000 that was matched, and then the committee also contributed another $7,000 for a total of $33,000, and then our committee also donated $4,000 for the World Community Kitchen, again for support of Ukraine. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Mary, could you come up here for a moment? There you are. Thank you. Here, let's do it this way. So we are never make fun of Mary not being able to see over here. We're going to do something in 2 weeks. Mary will be standing up here. But for today, I apologize.
That's
Go
fine.
for it.
I think the mic works.
Yes.
Okay, good. So anyway, I wanted to tell you about an upcoming service project this coming Saturday. Last month, on May 28th, we had a collaborative safety training event at the Pacific Renaissance Plaza in Oakland, Chinatown. And we had a great turnout with seniors. We had 15 volunteers from our club, 10 volunteers from the Rotary San Francisco Chinatown, 3 volunteers from San Francisco number 2. We have volunteers for the Oakland Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and we had we have all these collaborative people coming last month, and we handed out 350 safety device. The little safety device, I should have bought one, I forgot, but you pull the pin and it goes.
It's better than our sound system here.
So this Saturday, we're going to do the second round, and we would like to, and it's going to be at the same place, at the Pacific Renaissance Plaza in Oakland, Chinatown, which is on Franklin, between Franklin and Webster on 10th Street. So we have a sign up on Club Runners, so please sign up. If you can't figure out how to sign up, don't matter, just email me, let me know you're coming, and then show up. We're going to have volunteers show up at 9:30. We're going to set up chairs, we have lanyard to go with this safety device, and we're going to distribute it between 10 and 12. So we'd love to have you be there. Last time we all had fun. And beside the training, we're going to have 3 police officers from the Oakland Police Department to talk about safety tip. We're going to have a director from the Department of Justice, because we want to raise this anti-hate Asian crime to the national level. So he's going to talk about safety issue. And then we're going to have a director from Asian United, who provided the funds to buy 600 of these safety devices. He's going to train the little seniors how to pull the pin, put it back in. There's a flashlight there, and we're going to do little pots of volunteer translating in Chinese and English to these seniors. So we welcome you to come, and it should be another successful event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Jesse Schmidt. Go ahead, just tell us about your...
Hello? Hello, Rotarians, guests, and Zoomers. Do we have a slide, Gabe? I'm Jesse Schmidt. I'm the chair of the Business Development Committee, and my committee is collaborating with a bunch of other people on this coming Tuesday. So this is 5 days away, people. The Summer Solstice Mixer is happening, and we want you there, and you there, and you there, and we need to have you registered. So please go on the Rotary calendar and find the Summer Solstice Mixer and get registered for this thing, because everybody's going to be there. We have Low-Cal Foods catering the event. We have Brooklyn West Winery. Stu Epstein's going to be there pouring the wine. The Oakland Interfaith Gospel Choir is going to be performing during the mixer, and we're doing this whole thing in collaboration with the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce. So please, Karen? It's outdoors. So the venue is Giovanna Tanzio's backyard. If you haven't been to one of Giovanna's shindigs, I haven't been there, but I've heard they're amazing. It's going to be outdoors. There will be cocktails galore, wine flowing. I think I covered everything. So hope to see you there Tuesday evening.
Thank you. Robert, give it to Robert Kidd.
Thank you, President Dudley. You've all heard of the epic hike from Richmond to San Leandro. On June 26th, Sunday, the last Sunday of this month, we'll have the third leg of the epic hike through Redwood Park. It's a brilliant hike under the redwood trees. It's going to be special. 8:30 Sunday morning, June 26th, and yes, the entire event will be held outdoors.
Thank you. Michael Bruck. You have a couple things.
Quickly, last Thursday of this month, June 30th, Dudley's demotion. He's referred to it once or twice already. Be here in the ballroom. Let's have a big turnout for Dudley in person. Now, to introduce today's speaker. Our speaker today is Joel Makower. Should take this off. Joel is a writer, a speaker, and a strategist on corporate sustainability practices and clean technology. He's the co-founder of Green Biz Group. Green Biz is a media and event company based right here in Oakland, which works with businesses to transition to a clean economy. He recently returned from an event in Amsterdam. He speaks all over the country, all over the world. He's a former nationally syndicated columnist, the author of over 12 books. He's been a commentator on environmental topics for public radio, appears frequently in broadcast and print media. One of his books, by the way, a few years ago was an oral history of the Woodstock Music Festival. Joel's an Oakland native, a graduate of Skyline High. The Makower and Bruck families have known each other for a long, long time. Joel and I have known each other way before we both had gray hair. Please welcome Joel Makower.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, we were brunettes back. I think I met you just like months after you graduated from Oakland Tech, so it's been a couple of decades. Thank you so much for having me here, but also thank you for what you do, the amazing work that you do here in the Bay Area and all over the world. It's truly impressive, and I'm in awe of all that I just heard about the things that you're involved with. I'll talk about the things that I'm involved with, and this clicker is not going to work somehow. So this is going to be a challenge. Oh, here we go. We'll see. It'll be interesting. Can you? Oh, all right, that's fine. It's working too well now. Here we go. It's one of those days. So yes, I'm the co-founder of a company over on 14th and Broadway, not too far from here. We have about 50 employees around the world. We put on some big conferences. We have a whole digital media platform, and we have a membership group of sustainability executives from very big companies, about 90 of them, from whether it's Google, Apple, Facebook, to McDonald's. We have 2 railroads, 3 airlines, 5 banks, and we bring them together multiple times a year, pre-pandemic and starting again now, for what we call peer-to-peer learning and what they tend to call group therapy. But that's sort of the point. If you don't mind keeping the slides up, that would be great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I usually talk for 45 minutes or more, so I'm going to try and get into this, just give you a flavor of my world. And I want you to, because most people don't appreciate or understand, because most of what I find myself involved in is not stuff you necessarily read about in the media or hear about in other places. But just sort of as a level set, I want you to sort of imagine if you were to see the following headlines. One of the major U.S. airlines was the latest to invest millions and millions of dollars in what's called sustainable aviation fuel to replace conventional jet fuel. One of the largest cloud computing companies in the world had said that they were going to take major involvement with ocean policy, or that the major utility in California had committed to remove more greenhouse gases from the atmosphere than they were emitting, or that one of the largest consumer products company in the world said they were going to start engaging in water-positive products and manufacturing facilities around the world. Or that another large food company said that they had aimed to achieve zero waste to landfills in about 3 years from now. Or that one of the largest tech companies in the world said that they have now invested over $3.5 billion in renewable energy projects. So if you were to see those headlines, you'd say, that's interesting, I had no idea, and maybe something is going on here that I didn't realize. So all of those things have happened in the last 2 weeks. Now, I've been starting presentations sort of with some version of this for well over 15 years, from pre-recession, through the recession, good times, bad times, Republican, Democratic, just everything that's been going on in the world for the past decade and a half. And every month, this has been happening, largely under the radar. And so it's been a really interesting journey. I've been looking at this for over 30 years, and I sort of watched sort of 3 or 4, actually, phases. One was first stop the bad stuff, whether it was illegal or just optically bad, the smokestacks and dumpsters and drain pipes and all the rest. And then companies got in the 80s and 90s got into the idea that, well, doing well and doing good, if we can improve our reputation and save some money on the bottom line at the same time. And they said, well, how do we not just grow the bottom line, but actually not just improve the bottom line, but grow the top line? How does this become an engine for innovation and new products and services and whole new business models? And then finally, how do we, this current era, which is now, how do we actually be net positive, not just do less bad, but how do we actually sequester more greenhouse gases than we admit, take out of the waste stream more trash than we put in, things like that. And so it's been really interesting. And so we've gotten to the point now where most companies are asking some version of the question, what's our sustainability strategy? And you can't see it because of the picture in the bottom left, right there, but yeah, it's sort of if you plot it along this bell curve from the left side, there's relatively few companies who are just talking the talk and not really doing that. It's really not that many, some of the fossil fuel companies and some others, but most companies are talking about this stuff and actually doing things. In that big fat middle are companies that are committing what I call random acts of greenness, which may be some product things or facility things or employee engagement things or community philanthropy things. There may be a lot of things, and they may even be bold and audacious things, but they're still kind of a series of disconnected dots. But at the other end is companies who are saying, how do we operate in a world where energy, water, carbon, waste, and toxicity become constraints? And what are the opportunities that fall out of that? And those are really, really interesting conversation. And that's kind of the world where I live these days. So we've gone from this world of just inadvertently negative impacts, this was just how business was done, to how do companies have deliberately positive impacts? If you're having trouble seeing some of these things, you might want to relocate, because I know it might be hard to see. But so people always ask, well, what's the business case for doing this? As if there's a business case for destroying the environment and making the world uninhabitable. And I have an old answer and a new answer to that question. The old answer is sort of this litany. If you go to any corporate event and you see some version of, well, we do this because it increases sales and cuts our costs, and innovation, and it helps us attract capital and attract talent and keep our current talent. We're now part of a supply chain, and it helps us be a preferred supplier to some of our customers. And of course, the reputational stuff, which I always put last, because most people think that that's really why companies are doing this in the first place, to green up their reputation. And most of this stuff, and maybe some of the stuff that I showed up at the beginning, is part of where companies are walking more than they're talking. They're actually doing more than they're saying. And there's reasons for that, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit later. So that's the old answer. The new answer is really much simpler, and it boils down to one word: risk. This is about risk, pure and simple. And there's lots of different kinds of risk. There's financial risk, regulatory risk, supply chain reputation, of course, the physical risk of actual facilities being harmed during a flood or a drought or anything else. And even the license to operate. If you're one of the largest water users in a water-stressed area here, you may not be welcome or able to open a new plant or even keep the existing plant going. Even if you're perhaps the most efficient water user of all the facilities in your area. We saw Coke and Pepsi plants being actually burned down in Bangladesh and in India because people were angry that they were taking the water supply that they so obviously desperately needed. So it's really interesting to look at the world through this way. And if you look at on this slide, there's a whole bunch of companies, and it's a whole range of companies, some of which you've heard of, some of which you haven't. They come from 7 or 8 10 different sectors, probably 3 or 4 different continents, from life's base, sort of everything from, steel and concrete to life's basic necessities like beer. And what do they have in common? Well, probably every business does, that's a pretty good guess, water, someone said, they all had to restate their earnings downward due to supply chain risks of key commodities. And by the way, this was done well before the pandemic and the current supply chain things. You probably, almost every company probably has some version of this now. So why am I bringing this up? Because this ties directly into one of the legs of what companies are doing. So let's just pick 3 of the companies on this list. So Unilever committed some time ago to start sourcing 100% of their raw materials sustainably. They vowed to change the hygiene habits of 1 billion people to help reduce diarrhea, which is one of the largest mortality events of particularly children. And then improves the standard of living of 500,000 of the small farmers and distributors, landholders that are part of their supply chain. Or Dow. Dow's doing something really interesting. They're actually looking at how do you quantify the nature services that business takes advantage of. If you think about, from cleaning the air to creating soil or preventing soil erosion to pollination and protecting against infestations, things like that, but certainly cleaning the air and the water. They started putting a price on that, and through that started making calculations in some of their plants, and particularly in South America. Would it be cheaper for us to leverage and harness and protect nature services as opposed to building a big steel and concrete wastewater treatment plant? Just one example. And so they're now evaluating their investments through the lens of what's called ecosystem services. Or one more, this consumer product company that obviously most people know, you think of what are their issues? Well, they've got some big problems. First of all, in the coral and ivory and diamonds and so many other things that are part of their products that are subject to illicit or trading or child labor or deforestation or any number of things. And then, of course, they use a lot of paper for their catalogs and those beautiful blue boxes. And how do they do that without deforesting? So you look at these things and say, okay, are these guys doing this just to green up their image and do marketing? No, you probably didn't know about these things in the first place. So this is part of a world of how do you mitigate risk. So that's just a really interesting part of that. And then just looking at the subject of climate, and just to think of what's the risk to companies. If you look at what's happening and what's going to be happening increasingly with climate, with water and increased storms, and particularly heat, you've got, it's going to affect growing seasons, it's going to affect farm workers' health and safety. Even now, farm workers can't work on certain days when it hits 3 figures in the temperature. There's land degradation issues, there's the effects of climate change on food storage and distribution. During Hurricane Sandy, for example, there was one major food distribution center in New York's area. It happens to be located at the intersection of Harlem and Hudson Rivers, and it was this close to being flooded. And that's where almost all the food that comes into New York. They've since started to, there's now one in Jersey, and they're starting to try to mitigate that. But anyway, you start to look at these things. Soil fertility, which is critical. It's even been declared a national security challenge that if we don't have the soil, we can't feed people. We have a nutrition and hunger problem. Obviously, there's the income. So it goes on and on. You can read these as well as I can say them. But this is just one glimpse into the risks. And again, risks is the key word here that companies are facing. And so they're working at how do you solve these things, how do you address them now, what are the technologies, the business challenges, the investments that they need to do this. And that's just sort of the area. So ignoring sustainability has become a risk factor for companies. And what's interesting is that, we long ago, I sort of know how old I am because of Michael's introduction, but, I back at the dawn of the environmental movement, and I was a senior in high school that year, 1970, we were talking about, business is messing up the environment, business is bad, business this and that. And that was the meme, and still is to a large extent, what's the impact of business on sustainability? But the conversation's also flipping now to what's the impact of sustainability on business? And business is waking up to this fact, as are their investors, the potential employees, or the current employees even, obviously the regulators, although that in the US that's less than it used to be. So this is a really, really interesting area, and it's very, very rich. And I just want to, and then I'd love to get your questions. I'd much rather hear what you want to know than just talk about all this stuff that I know. You know, most people look at this stuff and they say, okay, this is about green. And that's not untrue. But I want to sort of, you know, help you understand the complexity and the nuance that's in this world that I spend time on. In reality, there's the green stuff, and then there's you can't even see that well, there's the sustainable stuff, and then there's regenerative, which is sort of the new terms. How do companies be more involved in regenerating the natural resources that we need for our economy? By the way, roughly 50% of global GDP relies on nature. 50% of global GDP, about $40 trillion a year, relies on healthy environment. And that's what's at stake here from the business perspective. But it gets even more so is that if you start to look, and you probably can't see this from the back, but if you start to look that this is about everything from products and supply chains and transportation, facilities and operations and sales and risk and strategy and human resources and on and on, this is now infecting every part of companies. Not that long ago, and certainly when I got going back, you know, in the late 80s on this topic, there weren't even chief sustainability officers then, but later those came in the 90s and 2000s. And that was one person, sometimes an army of 1 or 3 people inside a multi-billion-dollar company tasked with figuring all this stuff out. And now this stuff is embedded, dispersed throughout companies, and it's become part of the fabric. Even those that don't talk about it, in fact, a lot of them don't, this is what's going on. So you put this together, and this becomes this incredibly complex, nuanced world. And this is just inside one company. This doesn't get into the value chains of what happens up at the top from forests and fields and oceans and other things where things are sourced all the way through the manufacturing use and disposal or end use of products. So I'm happy to talk about the circular economy or the clean economy or climate tech, so many of these things, but it starts with what's going on inside companies. So I'm going to stop there because I could talk more about this. Oh, I'm sorry, had one more slide, which I guess is gone, but that's okay. It just looked at, there it is, the range of issues that these companies are dealing with now, from waste and energy and biodiversity, health, circular economy, finance, and what's called the ESG, environmental, social, and governance metrics, on and on. Again, it is part and parcel now of business, and it's a really interesting and exciting place to be. And I've been in this for a long time, and I still wake up every day getting to pinch myself that I get to sort of be in the middle of this and learn what's going on and help companies get further faster. So I'll stop there, and thank you. We'll take questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. We've got a mic here, and Peter, you can pick up questions online. David, you're in front. David Stein.
Now it's fascinating. Joe Titans on class of 74.
Did you say Skyline 74?
Yes, Skyline.
You and Tom Hanks, right?
Tom Hanks' class, you led the way for us, so thank you. That was fascinating. I have several questions, but let me pick one. To what extent is government policy helping or hindering this transition in business, and what should we be encouraging legislators to do in our own behaviors?
Yeah, it's a great question. What's fascinating is how much of this is happening outside of the policy arena, at least in the United States. What's fascinating is how much progress and how much this picked up scale, scope, and speed during the previous administration, for example. It's not because of, it's because of lots of reasons, but this is definitely happening because investors and customers, and I mean more B2B customers than individual consumers, that's a whole nother topic, and others are pressing. Obviously, here in California, in the Bay Area, we live in this bright green bubble, let's call it, blue and green bubble, where there's a lot of progressive legislation. I just wrote a piece, actually. I was just in Amsterdam at a circular economy conference. I spoke there, and I wrote a piece that's called in Europe's burgeoning circular economy, regulation equals innovation. And so many of the companies that were there, Bang & Olufsen I was talking to, and a company called Reckitt, which is sort of like P and Procter & Gamble that makes a lot of consumer products, they're doing what they're doing because of the regulatory environment in the EU. Similarly in Asia. So we could go much further, much faster, and there's a whole list. I'm not a policy wonk on this, in this arena, but from everything from e-waste, electronic waste, to price on carbon, to pricing water at its true value. I mean, it just goes on and on. Even obviously just mitigating or adapting to the climate tsunami that's coming at us. We're not prepared for that at all. You can read stories about it every day, and at least in the business press and some others. So there's a lot that can be doing. But again, what's remarkable is how much has been taking place in lieu of that kind of pressure. Yeah.
Just say, Peter Sherris, you have a question online?
Greg Knight is asking, as consumers, how can we identify greenwashing versus true, positive, sustainable actions taken by corporations?
How to identify greenwash? Is that what the question?
As individual consumers, how do we identify greenwashing versus?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I got into this in 1989 when I wrote a book called The Green Consumer. And at the time, there was the first ever survey of American consumers about so-called green consumerism, and it said that 87% of consumers would gladly make the greener choice, and something like 67% would be willing to pay 5% or more for the privilege of doing that. And over the past 30-some years, those data have not changed, and neither have most consumers' habits. So we're still talking that talk. And figuring out what makes a good company is really, really hard to do for consumers because there's no standard. There's reputation, and this is where companies get in trouble because they try to talk about their reputation or to play up their reputation without necessarily having the goods. But it's extraordinarily difficult. I'll give you one example. I learned a number of years ago that Levi Strauss, at the time was the world's largest buyer of cotton, world's largest cotton buyer, had started sourcing 2% of their annual cotton buy organically. They weren't going to make organic jeans. They'd been there and done that. It hadn't worked. But they were starting to blend it into their conventional buy, much the way that you'd buy, you see recycled paper is 20% recycled or something like that. And I thought, that's interesting. You don't have to be a journalist like me to want it. That's interesting. But I wanted to write about it. And I called them and they said, well, we don't want to talk about it. And I persisted and finally got them to talk about it. And I said, why didn't you want to talk about it? I said, well, look at it from our perspective. When we talk about what we're doing, we have to explain that cotton is one of the hardest crops to grow, and the incredible water, pesticide, fertilizer, intensity of all that, and the groundwater runoff, and worker health and safety, and the birds and the trees. We risk our customers saying, so you mean 98% of what you make is bad for people on the planet? Why only 2%? Why not 5%? We're going to start doing campus boycotts till you commit to 10% organic cotton. Right? You can kind of hear that conversation going on. And at the time, they couldn't even guarantee that there would be 2% for all the cotton that they buy. So the problem is that the problem statement here is that when you talk about what you're doing right, you often illuminate problems that the public doesn't know you have. Cotton? Who knew? And so this is why we don't hear about what companies are doing. This is why companies actually would prefer to just do this stuff and not talk about it. And we as consumers don't get to learn about it. So I don't have a good answer to the magic way you look for this seal or look for this statement or look for this blessing, because there isn't one, and it continues to be a problem, and that's full stop. That's sort of the state of affairs right now.
Joel, no, you okay? Joel, this year we're highlighting the new Rotary area of focus, the environment. In your honor, we're making a donation to the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, SRAG, toward their focus on biodiversity, sustainable living, pollution, the climate, food systems, and a circular economy. Wish you would have had time to talk about that more. Informing us what that is. Thank you very much for being a part of our Civic Thursday meeting. Are there any, I know there's one other bell ringer, and I'll always take money before the end of a meeting. Joe Goralka, are you still here? Oh, okay. We'll get him next time. Okay. CJ, would you tell us about next week, please?
Yes, sir. Lance McGee, a.k.a. Unique Derek, will share the journey which led him to unlikely dual careers, that of a trauma-informed wellness counselor for teachers at an East Oakland middle school, and that of a renowned clown. Hear how this combination helps provide him personal balance and allows him to use the experience he's gathered through humor and healing to enrich his abilities at both jobs. He says, quote, making the invisible visible. Don't miss it. He's a great guy.
Thank you. It's going to be a very fascinating presentation. Next week is going to be my last meeting here at the podium, and so I invite you to come. And we are still, one last announcement, we still need 2 or 3 bowlers for the Rotary Kingpins. Please, if you've ever thrown a bowling ball, they don't allow taking the ball and rolling it down the back of the brontosaurus, but as I said before, if you can roll it between your legs and get it down to the other end, you're welcome to join our team. And if you can average 200, you're really welcome to join the team. But anyway, please consider joining us on Wednesday nights. It starts July 6th. Thank you, Alex Kaffka, for our thought for the day. Thank you, Karen Friedman, for introducing Keith. Thank you, Keith, for being who you are. We always love you. Thank you, Barbara, Mary Jiang, and Joe for sharing some flags. Usually, presidents get about 50 of these things. They go in a box, and I don't know what they do with them. Linda, what do you do with your flag? But I have 4. There's plenty of room on my wall for a couple more. Thank you. Okay, Barbara, thank you for sharing our Carl Stuckey World Community Service. That's one of our fabulous committees. Jesse Schmidt, thank you for come to the mixer next Tuesday night. Robert Kidd and Michael Bruck, thank you, Michael, for sharing all you did about me and getting rid of me. And thank you, Michael, for the walk. Joel, thanks so much for coming and being our speaker this week. And CJ, we love you. Thank you for sharing about Unique Derek. And thank you, the meeting production team. You're the greatest. You know, some of you may have been to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. And it's been worked on for, I don't know, 60, 80 years, something like that. They have their own stonemasons. And the question is always, when are you going to finish the cathedral? And their answer is, when there's peace on earth. We will get our AV down when there is peace on earth. Thank you. You're great. We appreciate you. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Remember that we are Rotary, serve to change lives, and don't keep Rotary a secret. This meeting is adjourned.